Hey, so I'm doing a quick walkthrough of the code now. In the talk I have with Mike, he told me you guys use Next. So I actually migrated away 3 apps or 3 webs from Next. I'm not the biggest fan of Next. It works, but for me, I really dislike the dev server. That's kind of like the biggest problem I have with it. Anyway, I am also using Tailwind. So you can see here, I built a custom design system. I'm not using any component library. I'm not using ChatCN or anything. I have a Figma with all of these variables and components and everything. So you can see here, it's just some basic Tailwind things, some animations. I'm using Tailwind before. So you have this here, and then so I have my utils folder. I'm using server actions here. So like I said, I built these custom. So I'm not using, at first I was using the Firecrawl API, but then I realized that Firecrawl actually basically visits your site, probably using something like a Predator or something like that maybe, and then it gets the HTML, and I guess basically it generates titles and descriptions for you instead of using the metadata that comes with the meta tags. So I actually wanted to showcase or to show errors when a site was missing or a site is missing that metadata. So you can see here, I normally do these things. I don't do this manually. Like I like at first writing my functions and then asking Cursor to write tsdoc for me, because it's easy. It's nice. You can actually hover. You don't have to go to the definition when you're using this function. So you can just hover over the function, and then you're gonna see the description for it. So again, these are super simple. You can look at them, but basically, it's just some server functions that are constructing the LLMs.txt metadata, store it in a Redis, which like I said, I'm using in Redis. It's super simple. I'm using Upstash. It has a pretty generous free tier. Obviously, I know there is a token here, but I left it here because it's a private repo, and so you can guys use it and don't have to create an account to use locally. So again, I'm using a similar setup like ChatCN does. I'm using different libraries, but basically I use Tailwind variants. I believe ChatCN uses class variance authority to build variants. I like Tailwind variants more, but it works pretty similar. So basically you have that. Again, the folders just the hooks, which I'm using for the use sites to retrieve content. I'm using SWR instead of React Query for these simple things. I normally don't use React Query, to be honest. If I have to do something with the REST endpoint, I try to use SWR because I think it has a more like a simpler API. I would say you don't have to grab anything in a provider or anything like that. So I'm using the mutable version of it. The mutable version, what it does is that it disables all of the revalidations for you unless you revalidate manually when mutating. So basically you can see I'm using SWR, I'm adding the websites. So here I'm mutating the cache, I'm saying revalidate false because I know it's all right. Then I'm removing the site, and what I'm doing here, if you do it this way, so you can see I'm doing it 2 different ways. If you do it this way, it's gonna roll back on error. The regenerate site, same thing. And here you can see in multiple places, I'm kind of like simulating a delay just because obviously it's a Redis, you are doing like a super small operation, so it's really fast, and I wanted to show some of these animations. And that's it for the hooks, for the use site hook. Then I built, like I said, I built my own small design system. I'm using Radix. I normally don't use Radix. I built the design system for the company I'm part of now. We used React Aria components. I normally don't use Radix now. If I have to use something now, I would use Base UI probably, but Radix works. I know now it's kind of deprecated, not deprecated, but they're not maintaining it actively, just fixing bugs. But anyways, I just built this using Radix. I built some components. So you can see the variants here that I talked about. They are all custom. Again, drop-down menu, icon button, popover, section container, spinner, and then some icons that I have here. Because if you see my Twitter account, you can see that I have some designs. So sometimes I just build custom icons, and that's why you see here the SVGs. Because I'm just exporting them from Figma and using them here. That I didn't build this icon for this in specific. I had them already, and I just pasted them here. And then the structure is pretty simple. So one thing you are gonna see here that might look weird is that I do something a lot that looks like this. So you can see that I'm calling a function inside this thing, the return statement for a component, because I'm not a fan of ternaries. You could do a ternary here, but they look awful in my opinion. So you can do this here. It works fine. It's way more readable. You can say, well, instead of having this, you can have a different component maybe, but then you have some prop drilling, which I also don't like. So I feel like this is actually the better approach. And it's actually really nice because let's say that this one is error is a variable, but it could be more like a function and it could have a type guard. So here even you might be able to access that value, right? If you call this error, then a type guard, then let's say that error has a message. So then you will be able to do like error.message here, right? And maybe you can do some like obviously calculations here, like if you have to do something like big, maybe like a reduce or something, it's way more readable than having it inside the ternary. That's why I'm doing this. And then all the other stuff is pretty standard. I would say I'm using motion. I normally use motion for animations. So I'm using motion here, nothing crazy, and all that stuff. Again, it's nothing crazy. I normally leave these comments when the size is the file size, yeah, it's too large. And then for the sessions, like I said, I'm using a session. I left a comment here, but you can see here that I'm using external store to build a session. So basically I can listen to local storage in case someone just removes the token. It automatically generates one for you. And obviously when you open this page again, it's gonna open this up for you. I have the hook here for the use session, super simple. And I would say that's pretty much it. Yeah, and then I have a route just to return a file instead of, otherwise you would return it as HTML. I wanted to return a file for the LMs.txt file. And that's it. That's all.